Skilled hands bring the faded past to life and reach back to rescue treasures lost in the wake of time. Snatched from oblivion, aglow once more with original splendor, priceless treasures from the past now live again. The paths that lead to treasure are often found by those who follow a dream. As a child, Ken Hyde's dream was to fly. Today, he is an airline pilot. Ken Hyde lives in rural Virginia. Here, with his wife and daughter, he pursues a larger dream. And each day, that dream comes closer to fulfillment. Nestled safely in its hangar, an aeronautical wonder from another time is coming to life. Bearing the colors of the U.S. Army Signal Corps, it is a Curtiss JN-4D, one of the famous Jennies that first took to the skies after the United States plunged into World War I. With advanced designs, 6,000 Jennies were built to train young American flyers. Though she never fought in combat, the Jenny helped redefine the rules of war. She taught a generation of pilots the principles of air power. After the war in the roaring 20s, heads turned to the skies as barnstormers roared across America. Surplus Jennies were expendable props in an aerial burlesque, which sometimes ended in tragedy. Today, only fragments remain. From such meager clues, Ken Hyde has learned how the plane was built.
It basically was a hand-built airplane. They had some automation, but most everything was done by hand. And I didn't see any reason why I couldn't do that if I followed the old procedures and did it pretty much as they did. And it was a test.
Ken is returning his Jenny to the way she was when these men put her together in the Curtis factory. To recover a lost technology, he has become a student of history, searching through manuals, blueprints, and old parts. Here, he finds evidence hidden in a photograph that helps him reconstruct a windshield. "15 years ago, Ken Hyde found the pieces of a Jenny in a building set for demolition. Before long, he'd found the parts of 2 more.
There was a time when we had 3 airplanes in the basement of this little 1,500 square foot house in the subdivision.
I just remembered just things everywhere, and I didn't know. I knew it was an airplane, but, you know, when you're that small, you don't realize that all these little parts and pieces are really going to go into something that fantastic. It almost seems like a dream. I just remember it being a very slow process, something that you looked at, you didn't touch, you wanted to help, and you were politely told to go do something else.
Out of Ken Hyde's dream, the shape of a Jenny slowly emerged. He has spent months on small details to ensure the historic accuracy of every nut and bolt. For the Jenny must be authentic to be true to his dream.
When I started the airplane 15 years ago, a lot of the workmanship at that time was geared to just being airworthy. And over the years, the antique movement has changed. It's getting more into museum quality. And the value of the airplane is based on being as authentic as you possibly can make it. It's very easy, and it's a lot faster to do it with modern materials and modern techniques. But more than anything else, if it's going to be preserved as a museum piece, it ought to be just the way it came from the factory.
15 years of work now show in every detail. To cover just one wing, it took days to stitch the Irish linen by hand. The family spent endless nights fraying the cloth tapes that cover the seams. Even the varnish formula took months to develop.
All clear.
Okay, it's coming off the lip now.
To be authentic, the Jenny must be airworthy. Before she can fly, her engine has to be tested.
Real easy as it comes off.
Kenny, it's turning.
Okay, choke on.
Choke on.
The principle behind flying it, and a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't fly the airplane, you know, because if you damage it, then all that work is for nothing. But we've been fortunate, and we have most of the parts and pieces and we can manufacture anything on the airplane, with the exception of the engine, possibly. So hopefully, knock on wood, we won't damage the airplane, but if we do, we can restore that. So that's why we want to fly the airplane. Contact.
Contact.
Choke off.
Choke off.
Contact.
Contact.
Throttle close.
Throttle closed.
Way to go, baby.
On a summer afternoon, family and friends gather to see her fly.
Okay, it's contact. I did have stage fright that day with all those people because Murphy's Law says that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen right there in front of 230 people. But it's really exciting to see it all come together. It's just great when things start all flowing together. It's been a long time. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of frustration sometimes, but it's been an awful lot of fun.
It really lifts off in a hurry, too. There it goes. Isn't it beautiful?
It's got to be exciting.
It is really exciting for him. It was really exciting for him.
At 65 miles an hour, she soars again, one of 4 airworthy Jennies in the world today. Forgotten skills have been relearned, and in the skies over the Virginia countryside, a priceless treasure from our past now lives again. In Auburn, Indiana, another treasure is up for sale. Its value to be determined by the highest bidder.
You now have one of the rarest opportunities ever available in your lifetime to purchase one of the finest restored Duesenbergs in the history of the world. One of the greatest Duesenbergs ever created and one of the finest restorations ever assembled on a Duesenberg automobile right here in Auburn, Indiana. How much you would have bid? Who give $1,500,000? Who give $1
A Model
million?
J Duesenberg glitters on the auction block, and wealthy collectors who wish to possess it must pay the price.
I got $500,000 now, $750. Do you want to bid at $500,000 now, $750? I got $500,000 now, $750. Do you want to bid there? $500,000. You better give $750. I got $600,000 and now $700,000. You want to bid? I got $600,000. You want to bid $700,000. Lawrence, you want to bid the same 2 bidders at $700,000 now, $800,000. You want to bid now $900,000. You want to bid there? $900,000. You want to bid there? $900,000. Yes, see, at $900,000. You want to bid $1 million. Or you want to bid $1 million? Anybody else? At $900,000, you would have bid $1 billion. Get your bid in. At $900,000, anybody else you would have given $1 million. Would you give $950 and maybe you could help me get $1 million? Going once, $950. Going twice, $950,000. Anybody else at $950? I close the bidding right here at $900,000.
In the presence of a Model J, people tend to get stirred up. It's part of the legacy left by Fred and August Duesenberg, who grew up on a farm near Rockford, Iowa, just before the turn of the century. Mechanically minded as young boys, they became innovators of engine technology, but their first love was racing. The Indianapolis Speedway was the crucible where new designs were put to the test. In the 1920s, their engineering genius brought the checkered flag 3 times. In 1928, at their Indianapolis plant, they created the ultimate passenger car. The owner of a supercharged Model J could cruise in luxury at 115 miles an hour. In Hollywood, the Duesenberg became the mark of a star. Clark Gable owned 2. Gary Cooper's was goldenrod yellow with pale green fenders. James Cagney smiled behind the wheel. But the Depression finally caught up with the Duesenberg. Less than 500 had been built when the assembly line shut down for good. Duesenberg owners form an exclusive club. In Auburn, Indiana, they gather every Labor Day weekend to parade their restored Model Js before an admiring crowd of automotive enthusiasts. Owners love their Duesenbergs with fervid enthusiasm. Many are obsessed with perfection. Others simply enjoy the status that comes with ownership and the pride of showing off their treasures to the thousands who come to look. Some restore their Duesenbergs not to drive them, but to compete.
There's three in there.
Auburn native Phil Allison judges a restoration. Growing up around classic cars, he restores them today for wealthy collectors.
One of the best descriptive terms I've ever heard, and it's not mine, I get it from Gordon Buerig's book, and the title of his book is Rolling Sculpture.
Sorry, they brought the Murphy convertible in yet? Yeah.
And I think that so neatly defines the work on these cars, whether it be the Duesenberg or the Cord, but they were such unique cars, and they are truly works of art. I know for years I was always hoping for the opportunity to get to do a Duesenberg. Now we have 3 in our shop, and so now we have arrived.
All right, today let's get started on dismantling this car.
Once owned by movie actor Tyrone Power, Model J number 391 has just been purchased for $610,000. Spruced up with a cheap coat of paint by its most recent owner, number 391 will now be restored to original condition from the ground up.
We will probably spend around 2 years on the car, maybe not quite that long, but it'll be close. And there's a lot of things in the restoration business that just can't be hurried. There are on that car several missing parts, and you don't go to your local parts store and order them. You've got to find them. And there will be several items on it that are going to be difficult to come up with. And if we can't find them, they'll have to be fabricated, and all this takes time. To do a total restoration, we're talking about dismantling the car completely. Then the rear end or differential rear axle assembly will be totally gone through. The engine and transmission will be totally rebuilt. The exhaust manifolds will be reporcelained. The Duesenberg engine has an excessive amount of aluminum on it, which has to be highly polished. There's a lot of hours of just polishing and cleaning. And the chroming itself is a major process. It's a triple plating. And you first cover it with copper, and then it's buffed, then it's nickeled, then it's buffed, and then it's chromed, and then it's chrome buffed. A lot of times we like to have a car sit for 4 to 6 weeks just in primer. Then it's blocked. Then we put on maybe 4 to 5 coats of lacquer and let it sit for another 4 to 6 weeks. Once it's totally cured, then we'll sand off maybe 3 or 4 of those coats of paint and blocking it out. And then we'll put on another 4 to 5 coats, let it sit for another 4 to 6 weeks, and then we'll probably end up sanding off 2 or 3 of those coats. And that's how we get the high luster, high depth finish. It takes obviously a fair amount of money to fund a project like this, and a lot of people are not in a financial position to do this until they're on in years. And some customers express concern that they're not going to live long enough to see the finished product. I think in most cases they're being a little facetious, but I can appreciate that when you look at a long-term project in your later years, it could be of concern.
Restored for the pleasure of those very few who can afford it, the Duesenberg lives on in Auburn, Indiana. But in a city far away, heroic endeavors are recovering the treasures of a nation for all the world to see. Through the heart of Leningrad flows the Neva River. Along these banks, nearly 3 centuries ago, one man created a great city, St. Petersburg, which became the capital of Imperial Russia. Today, Peter the Great still looks out over his city. With watchful eye, he gazes on wondrous visions. Grand and exuberant visions of a Tsar who, like his country, was strong and proud. Fairy tale palaces sprung up as if by magic. Country playgrounds for the imperial court of Peter and his successors, designed by the great architects of Europe, created from exquisite materials by a multitude of craftsmen summoned from afar. On long winter nights, these rooms were made brilliant by candlelight, reflected 1,000-fold in crystal mirrors. Light danced on paintings overhead and set the walls ablaze with color. Light burned in gilded figures as costumed nobility danced into the night. They waltzed on parquet floors of wood from the forests of Europe and Asia, designed in astonishing patterns. Surrounded by their treasures, the Tsars and their court waltzed on into the 20th century. The dance ended with the Russian Revolution in 1917, but the palaces lived on as museums. Then distant rumblings in Europe suddenly exploded on their doorstep. In 1941, Nazi forces surrounded Leningrad. Hitler planned to level the city, but the Soviet army would not yield. During the siege, the Nazis occupied 4 palaces on the city outskirts. After 900 days, they withdrew, burning the palaces as they left. When the fires died, a nation's treasures lay in ruin. At the Catherine Palace, chimneys protruded from a roofless skeleton. Statues, victims of bombshells and gunfire. Stillness filled the great hall. Parquet floors lay charred under a blanket of winter snow. A soldier in the Soviet army, Alexander Kadrinsky, remembers the siege. After the Nazi retreat, he entered the Catherine Palace. On this spot, in the Great Hall, he looked up through broken rafters at the winter sky.
В самом дворце те интерьеры, которые
Inside the palace, the interiors that were not burned were looted.
разграблены были.
Pictures had been viciously slashed out of their frames. Only the outer edges remained.
Поломаны двери.
Doors were broken
В
away.
павильонах
Paintings were on the floor, cut to pieces. That's one thing.
Это одно. И второе,
The other thing is that there were landmines hidden everywhere, and the palace itself was set to blow up.
под дворцом лежало 11 бомб, авиабомб, по тонне весом каждая. И кроме того, вся система павильонов и дворца была подключена к...
Beneath it was a series of one-ton bombs wired together to go up in a single blast. It's a miracle that the first soldiers to enter the palace gates after the German retreat discovered this system and disarmed it.
Перекопанный окопами парк.
The park around the palace was dug up everywhere with trenches and gun emplacements. And in the middle lay the charred hulk of the palace. The palace decorations were strewn about the park in pieces. Sculpture, arms, heads, torsos lay all about. The picture was so terrible and depressing that one's first impression was that resurrecting it would be impossible. On the other hand, people could not reconcile themselves to blotting out a page of history, the glorious history of these monuments. And so we decided to undertake the restoration. Pieces of the ruined palaces were scattered everywhere, hastily hidden before the siege. From fields, from secret vaults, from the hands of retreating Nazis, even from the Neva River, the missing pieces were returned. Restoration could now begin. A painter and engineer, Kudrinsky directed the work at the Catherine Palace. "We long to recreate these monuments," he said at the time, "but do we have the guts to do it?" Under his direction, scores of artists and craftsmen began to rebuild the palace. Today, Alexander Kudrinsky works with a new generation of artisans who use original architectural drawings and pre-war photographs that miraculously survived the destruction. From an old black and white photograph, a painted ceiling comes to life. The design is rendered in color, and figures are drawn to scale by artists trained in period styles and techniques. Designs are modified and approved before the painting begins. For hours at a time, they reach overhead. Standing so close to the ceiling, these artists are unable to see the entire painting at once. Skill and planning guide them where their eyes cannot. After 3 years of work, the ceiling is almost finished. Parts of a statue were retrieved from the palace grounds. From these shattered limbs, a body is reformed. A woodcarver creates anew what fire and shrapnel destroyed. With clay, he models a missing twin that he will later replicate in wood. On the statue's chest, a fracture is mended, and a wound is healed. Once again, carvings are adorned with gold. Though each leaf weighs almost nothing, nearly 20 pounds of gold were needed to refurbish the Great Hall.
Huh?
Guided into place by human breath and held there by rabbit skin glue, The gold is burnished with an amber rod. Gilded faces blaze again. The palaces are reborn. The glory that was Imperial Russia radiates from every quarter once again. But today it shines with new brilliance. Reflected in the symmetry of crystal mirrors is the labor of modern craftsmen who have saved the treasures of a nation. In 1944, Peter's portrait was found in shredded fragments, scattered in the snow. Today, the scars are almost invisible. We rebuild these palaces to celebrate those who built them long ago, says Kudrinsky. But we need another 20 years before our work is finished. Today, from atop his horse, Peter the Great gazes on a miracle. Through heroic endeavors, his vision lives on. The farming country of eastern Colorado is far from Leningrad, but the passion to save a treasure can be found here as well. Compared to the Russian court, life in Burlington, Colorado is basic. But on the county fairground stands a treasure that might well have delighted the Russian nobility.
Hey, Well! Hey, Bob. See ya. You did. How you doing? All righty.
Local citizens brought this treasure here some 60 years ago, and today it is the pride of Kit Carson County. In the morning light, fantastic animals awake on what many herald as the jewel of American carousels. Because it was the sixth machine built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, it is known as PTC number 6. Caring for this unusual menagerie is an art conservator named Will Morton. In recent years, he restored the animals from decades of deterioration and unveiled a whimsical piece of American history. PTC number 6 was built in 1905 when carousels spun their magic the world over. In 1928, it was bought secondhand for $1,250 by Kit Carson County. At the fair that year, citizens paid 5 cents for a 5-minute ride. But this frivolous purchase would cost the county commissioners their jobs. Dust storms and the Depression brought hard times to Kit Carson County. Homeless families lived on the fairground. The carousel building was used to store feed and became infested with rats and snakes. There was talk of burning it down. Somehow, PTC number 6 survived, but it was never quite the same. Its magic vanished, and as each year passed, neglect moved it ever closer to the edge of ruin. In 1979, a group of concerned citizens brought Will Morton from Denver to preserve and restore it.
A lot of carousels have been refurbished, but this is the first one, to my knowledge, that was conserved and restored as a work of art might be. That is where we've made every possible effort to preserve the original material that we found here and to protect it as you would with a piece of fine art.
As he lifts the veil of time, Morton finds traces of Victorian artisans whose pencil marks look as though they were drawn only moments ago. Surrounded by their creations, Will senses the spirit of those craftsmen lurking nearby.
I spend days here alone, just working on the carousel, and your mind is going a mile a minute, even though your hand may not be, or the project doesn't seem to be going all that fast. Nevertheless, your mind is going. And so you're picturing the people who made this carousel and what they were thinking. I think part of doing a good job in restoration is discovering the people that made the thing, trying to put yourself in their place. And that's why I insist on doing things the way they did them.
Will Morton has preserved more than 90% of the paint on the animals. Now he restores what has been worn away. The Wurlitzer Monster Military Band organ is the heart and soul of PTC number 6. Over the years, water damage, heat, humidity, and hungry rats all played havoc with its vital parts. After 1,200 hours of restoration, the monster gets a checkup.
To our third performance of the 1986 Kit Carson County Fair and Pro Rodeo.
Every year in early August, people come from all over Kit Carson County to ride PTC number 6 once again. Today, a ride costs 25 cents, but it lasts a full 7 minutes.
I would like to look down from someplace beyond 50 years from now and feel that I'm being complimented by the restorer who's then at work, saying that the man who did this in the first place did a good job, and I'm pleased with what he did.
On the plains of eastern Colorado, another year passes. On a summer night, the carousel spins dreams that will not be forgotten in years to come. The age of sail reached its height in the 19th century when global voyages were made in tall ships. The forces of nature were harnessed by experienced hands, but when canvas was replaced by steam, the tall ships and a maritime tradition quietly vanished. In the port of Athens, the rusted hull of a once tall ship is destined for the scrapyard. In her 100-year lifespan, she sailed under many names and many flags. Now, Alyssa will be reborn. She was launched in Aberdeen, Scotland in 1877. In 1979, her hull is made sound, and she is towed across the Atlantic to the port city of Galveston, Texas, which has adopted Alyssa to symbolize the heyday of its maritime past. Long ago, she sailed into Galveston, and it is here on Galveston's waterfront that Alyssa's reconstruction begins. From across America, people come to renew her. Scenes of a 19th century shipyard come alive as obsolete skills are learned again. A new deck is caulked with hemp and sealed with pitch. Self-taught riveters add plates to her hull. Tree trunks are turned into masts. Costs rise into the millions, but funds are raised. With iron and wood renewed, Alyssa will sail again and carry in her new figurehead the spirit of those who have renewed her. In 1986, Alyssa is bound for New York to once again become a part of history. Galveston's mayor bids the crew farewell.
To the director of the Alyssa Project, David Brink, and all of you who have been involved with the Alyssa, your dream has truly grown to a miracle.
Clutching the yellow rose of Texas, Alyssa's figurehead points the way across the Gulf of Mexico. 100 years ago, she was manned by 8 deckhands. Today, she is sailed by hard-working volunteers.
Let's go, guys. Let's go to sails. Ready now.
Their footing is less sure, but perhaps more eager, because they have helped to restore and maintain her. Executive Secretary and grandmother Judy Peters became a volunteer 6 years ago.
And I knew I didn't know anything about a ship, but that I could help them so they could teach me what I needed to know. And I came down literally scared to death. But I knew I wanted to help, and I knew that they needed help. And I was willing and I was able. Some of the jobs, they couldn't hire me to do them, I wouldn't. But I'll do it for free because it's for the Alyssa, it's for the future.
Steady up on 115.
Okay, 115 is to our left. Fun, huh?
Pierre, why don't we do it this way? You always take the slacking side of the lower braces.
Overseeing Alyssa's restoration has been the responsibility of Walter Ribke.
Why don't you always help Pierre with the slacking side of the braces?
I think the key idea of this restoration is that this ship is not so much an artifact as it is a process. We're not so much concerned with her past as we are with our future. What we're interested in is the values and the crafts and the skills and everything that gave the world this beauty. We'd like it to be part of our lives now and carry it forward in the future. So the Alyssa is as much a process as it is a product.
Under gray skies, Alyssa sails north along the Atlantic coast.
Midships!
Learning from each other as days go by, volunteers discover new skills and confidence.
The 21st century breeze. And now children's children will haul on her sheets. They'll have a tall ship for their seas. And she'll sail again, boys. She'll sail once more. She'll dance o'er the ocean as she's done before. By Galveston Strand, you'll find her made fast.
Where did she go?
She's a tall ship for Texas, Alyssa. Lift up a glass and we'll sing to this fine lofty ship, returned and revived from the smuggler's grip. And here's to those souls who have saved her from hell. Your work's of it done, and you've done it quite well. And she'll sail again, boys. She'll sail once more. She'll dance o'er the ocean as she's done before. By Galveston Strand, you'll find her made fast. She's a tall ship for Texas, Alyssa.
Go as far as you can until you get where you want to stop.
John Elder, a business executive, summons the courage to go aloft with project director David Brink.
Big step over that little craneland there. Grab the chain with your right hand. Swing over. That's it, good. Now, before you hit the foot rope, say laying on just for practice.
Laying on, start
all the way over to the yard. Great.
Okay.
Good for you.
I did it.
Okay.
Okay,
Would help if I came over, wouldn't it?
Oh, just let that fall. Okay. Now pass it under. Double back over the. No,
Okay.
hold it. Double back over.
Okay.
No, hold it. No, don't pull it all the way through.
Oh.
It will be passing us to the port side. You take some pictures and give us a little friendly salute.
As she approaches New York, Alyssa is not alone. From all over the world, tall ships are coming to celebrate the restoration of the Statue of Liberty on her 100th birthday.
We got the battleship Iowa overtaking us on the port.
Traffic.
What's that right there?
Oh, look,
Cars.
through the bridge. It's a covered bridge.
No,
it's two layers. Two layers.
An urban world emerges through fog and mist. The sight brings mixed emotions.
I think there is a sense of possibly letting go for the crew. The crew thinks of Alyssa as their own, and rightfully so. We're the folks that have maintained her and sailed her up till now, and we don't mind sharing her with everyone else. But there's a little bit of a feeling of letting her go after the rest of this weekend, particularly Friday. She's not going to belong to just us anymore. She's going to belong to the world.
Alyssa last entered New York Harbor in 1884, just 2 years before the Statue of Liberty was unveiled. Today, a crew of volunteers has brought her here once again, and after a century, two ladies greet each other for the very first time. The moment is savored by the crew, but the celebration is about to begin. The spectacle unfolds, and Alyssa takes her place. She is the oldest of the large square riggers in the parade. Not long ago, Liberty welcomed tall ships from around the world to a flourishing America. Today, one by one, tall ships return to salute her as America renews her past. Alyssa has earned her place in history, and now her moment has come.
It's amazing just to think that, it all comes down to one moment. And here you are. And everybody knows it. It's a great, great feeling.
She passes the reviewing stands that line the shore.
Everybody was so proud of her that she was there. Volunteers had done it, and it made everybody see that anybody can be a part of restoration. You don't have to be a somebody. It takes all the little people to do it.
Volunteers have brought life to a dying ship and have restored the knowledge that can renew her again and again. Revived with a human spirit, fragments of our past become our treasures. They mirror who we are. They become living monuments to the achievements of our past and living testaments to our hopes for the future. Passing through the hands of one crew to the next, a tall ship is on a journey through time. Perhaps in years to come, the sight of her sails will inspire others to voyage forth, to fulfill their destinies, to cherish their treasures as they cross new horizons to places that live today only in our dreams.